least one person was killed and several wounded after an armed group attacked Haiti's Prime Minister Ariel Henry. Protesters and police scuffled in Amsterdam on Sunday as thousands of people defied a ban on mass gatherings for a demonstration against the Dutch government's coronavirus lockdown measures. Israel's military said it launched air attacks on Hamas positions in the Gaza Strip, a day after rockets fired from Gaza landed in the Mediterranean Sea. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. At least one person was killed and several wounded after an armed group attacked Haiti's Prime Minister Ariel Henry. The incident took place in the Haitian city of Gonaives during an armed attack by an armed gang against the Prime Minister Ariel Henry and his entourage leaving a church after the service of a mass in commemoration of the 218th anniversary of the independence. The person, whose identity is unknown, was killed in the middle of the shooting between members of an armed gang in the Barraboro sector and the security forces that protected Henry and other officials, according to Haitian media. Due to the failed attack against Henry, the other events that were scheduled by the commemoration of the independence of Haiti from France were cancelled. And Jamaica will deport Colombian national Marco Antonio Palacios, the prime suspect in the July 7th assassination of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse. A court in Jamaica decided that Palacios should be deported to Colombia on January 3rd instead of being extradited to Haiti as requested by Haitian authorities. Colombian ex-military officer Palacios, subject to an Interpol arrest warrant, was arrested in mid-October in Jamaica after 3 months on the run. The assassination of former Haitian President Jovenel Moïse was allegedly carried out by a commando made up of former Colombian army personnel, plus other suspects with links to the Drug Enforcement Agency and the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI. In Colombia, the government adjusts fuel prices upwards as of January 1st. According to the authorities of the Ministry of Mines, the adjustment was made by including items of the tariff for transportation by polyducts, land transportation, and marking tariffs. Prices vary among the different cities in the country. However, the average cost of 9,048 pesos per gallon of gasoline, $2.2, and 8,884 pesos, $1.94 per gallon of diesel. According to data published by the Bloomberg Agency, Colombia ranks 14th among the group of 61 countries analyzed with the most expensive gasoline in Latin America, since for an average income level of $19 a day, 16.8% of a day's salary must be spent to buy a gallon of fuel. In Argentina, the Fernandez administration awarded 141 housing units of the urban development plan Estación Buenos Aires to families who will live in the neighborhood of Parque Patricios in the capital of the South American country. See the details in the following report. By means of a general draw and through a co-management process with the General Labor Confederation and the Argentinian Workers' Union.
In the month of February, we are reaching the 40,000 home, and we are building throughout the whole of Argentina with different programs and land provided by unions. 100,000 houses simultaneously in February. So this is the Argentina we are starting to dream about. An Argentina with 3 key slogans: to fulfill your dreams, to generate jobs, and to provide predictability.
For the Fernandez administration, it is essential that the financial system no longer determines whether an Argentinian has a home or not.
In the times we live in, having a house is a right that any human being deserves, and the state must do what is necessary to facilitate access to housing for all those who need it. That is why we are here determined, as well as our Minister Jorge, to advance steadily, at a constant pace, to put all the strength we have to put into it. Many Argentinians are in need of these houses, and believe me, there is nothing more gratifying than the moment you hand over the keys to someone who will have for her entire family, her house, her roof.
The dream of owning their own home, which in the case became a reality in the Buenos Aires neighborhood of Parque Patricios for 141 families. This is a great achievement that I thought it will never happen, and I still can't believe it. The day we came to meet him, I walked in and cried, and I couldn't believe that this is my new place.
It is a joy, an emotion because you are having your house, right? Not that you are always paying the rent, but it is never your house, and this is your house, so there is a little more happiness in the family.
This house is going to be in my name. For women, it is sometimes very difficult to acquire their own home. It is always a little more difficult for us, isn't it? To be able to have a house to leave to my children, and in particular to my daughter. It is very meaningful to me because that is what it is. It is autonomy, it is independence, it is love, it is a house to rest in. Another promise fulfilled by the government of the Frente de Todos to solve the housing problems suffered by the most vulnerable sectors of Argentina.
Carolina Silvestre, Telesur, Buenos Aires.
In Bolivia, civil defense authorities carried out an operation this Saturday to rescue people who were trapped by floods in the department of Santa Cruz. According to civil defense authorities, a total of 10 people were rescued in the sector of the community of Nuevo Amanecer. The victims had been cut off from communication for several days after the rivers in this community in Santa Cruz overflowed, as a consequence of the heavy rains that have occurred during the last few days. Authorities had declared an emergency in the departments of Santa Cruz and Beni. Rescuees were taken to the city of Montero, where they will receive medical attention in order to know their health condition. In Brazil, 124 cities in the south are in emergency due to the arrival of a storm front that caused floods and at least 25 fatalities in the northeast region. According to professionals from Brazil's National Center for Monitoring and Warning of Natural Disasters, the strong storms that flooded entire cities in southern Bahia during December 2021 are moving to the central and mainly southeastern regions of Brazil. Meanwhile, they're warned that the situation could worsen in the coming days, with thunderstorms expected to hit the metropolitan area of Belo Horizonte, Rio de Janeiro, and to a lesser extent, Sao Paulo. The so-called South Atlantic Convergence Zone caused catastrophic rains in the mountainous region of Rio de Janeiro in 2011 and flooding in Minas Gerais in early 2020. And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Protesters and police scuffled in Amsterdam on Sunday as thousands of people defied a ban on mass gatherings for a demonstration against the Dutch government's coronavirus lockdown measures. Local authorities had outlawed the protests, saying police had indications some demonstrators were planning violence. But large numbers of people ignored the ban. Some unfurled banners with slogans such as "Less repression, more care," while others held signs demanding freedom. There was a heavy police presence on the square where the rally took place and in nearby streets. In Argentina, this Saturday, the mandatory health pass with a complete anti-COVID vaccination schedule came into force and will be asked at mass events. In the midst of the rise of the statistic of new infections, the measure applies to all citizens over 13 years of age who engage in activities predefined as high epidemiological risk, such as attending bars and nightclubs, group trips, or events with more than 1,000 people. In the last week of 2021, the nation registered more than 50,000 new cases in a single day, the highest number since the beginning of the pandemic. According to official figures, 65.5% of Argentinians are fully vaccinated. South Africa overcomes the peak of COVID-19 wave of the Omicron variant without a significant increase in fatalities. South Africa, the country where the new variant of COVID-19 was detected in November, announced on Thursday night that it had overcome the peak caused by Omicron without noticing a significant increase in the number of fatalities. In view of the improvement in the health situation, the presidency reported the lifting of restrictions, such as the night curfew in force for 21 months on the eve of the New Year's celebrations. In the last week, new infections dropped by almost 30% compared to the previous week, while hospital admissions decreased in 8 of the 9 provinces. The government of India announced that it sent a new shipment of anti-COVID-19 vaccine this Saturday in solidarity with the people of Afghanistan. The shipment of 500,000 vaccines is part of a humanitarian aid program aimed at mitigating the effects of the crisis that the Central Asian nation is going through after 20 years of war imposed by the United States. New Delhi informed that in the coming weeks it will send another 500,000 vaccines, cereals and essential medicines to Kabul in coordination with United Nations agencies. The year 2021 closes with a number of 198 million confirmed cases of COVID-19, meaning more than twice the figure reported in 2020, which was 83 million. According to data from the World Health Organization, 3.5 million people died in 2021, 84% more than the 1.9 million fatalities in 2020. While the figures, still very high, show a decline in coronavirus-related fatalities, which was 2.2% in 2020 and 1.7% in 2021. It is also expected that the progress of vaccination and the lower death rate shown by the Omicron variant will be reflected in a reduction of cases and deaths during 2022. This could mark the end of the acute stage of the pandemic, into the words of WHO Director Tedros Adhanom. In the United States, President Joe Biden signed a defense bill that defies Beijing by inviting Taiwan to military exercises in the Pacific. The United States National Defense Authorization Act for 2022, signed into law on Monday by President Joe Biden, provides for continued U.S. military support for Taiwan, amid tension between the island and Beijing, which considers it as an integral part of China. The text proposes to invite Taiwan to the world's largest naval exercise in 2022, called Rim of the Pacific. In response to the announcement, Chinese military expert Song Songpin said that Taiwan's participation in international exercises will increase the risk of war in the region. Ukraine banned ships sailing under the Russian flags from entering its waters, according to a new law that came into force this Saturday, January 1st. The ban also applies to ships belonging to Russian citizens or economic agents registered in Russia or pertaining to natural or legal persons, subject to special economic sanctions under the Ukrainian law. Relations between Moscow and Kiev began to deteriorate after the so-called Orange Revolution of 2004, when authorities in Ukraine decided to join the NATO agreement. With the arrival of Viktor Yanukovych, Ukraine sought better terms with Russia. 4 years later, he was defeated, causing the separation of the Crimea Peninsula and an internal armed conflict that reaches today. The Ukrainian authorities have accused Russia of meddling in their country's internal affairs, while Russia rejects such accusations and wishes that Kiev overcome that economic and political crisis. This Saturday, new post-Brexit custom rules for goods arriving from the European Union to Britain are taking effect. A leading food industry body has warned that the new border controls could lead to food shortages. Beginning on January 1st, importers must make a full customs declaration on goods entering the UK from the EU or other countries. Businesses will no longer be allowed to delay completing full import customs declarations for up to 175 days, a measure that was introduced to cope with the disruption of Brexit. The new measures require businesses to complete the correct paperwork at least 4 hours before goods can arrive at UK borders, or they risk being turned back at the border. Animal and plant-based products must also have statements of origin certificates. Northern Ireland and Ireland are exempt from the changes as political leaders continue negotiating the Northern Ireland Protocol. On Saturday, 446 asylum seekers arrived at a port in southern Italy after being rescued by an European NGO. Several of the asylum seekers had been previously evacuated from humanitarian reasons, since they required medical attention. The German organization Sea Watch, responsible for the initiative, explained that the rescue was carried out in 5 different maneuvers during the last week and this Saturday. Finally, they received authorization from the Italian authorities to disembark. According to the United Nations, 66,000 refugees arrived in Italy by sea from Africa and the Middle East in 2021. Pope Francis used his New Year's message on Saturday to issue a call for an end to violence against women, saying it was insulting to God. Pope Francis was speaking at the New Year's Day Mass in St. Peter's Basilica, dedicated to the Holy Mary. The pontiff presided over the Mass and blessed the statue of the baby Jesus. The Mass homily was focused on the role of the Holy Mary as a woman and a mother after the birth of Jesus Christ. Since the COVID-19 pandemic began nearly 2 years ago, Francis has several times spoken out against domestic violence, which has increased in many countries since lockdowns left many women trapped with their abusers.
How much violence there is against women. Enough. To hurt a woman is to outrage God, who created humanity from a woman.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. Israel's military said it launched air attacks on Hamas positions in the Gaza Strip, a day after rockets far from Gaza landed in the Mediterranean Sea. The Israeli military said the attacks late on Saturday hit a rocket manufacturing facility and a military post for Hamas. It comes after 2 rockets were fired from the Gaza Strip on Saturday morning, falling into the Mediterranean Sea off the coast of Tel Aviv. Gaza-based groups often test fire missiles towards the sea. No sirens were sounded and Israel's Iron Dome rocket interception system did not deploy, the army said in a statement. Israel keeps Gaza under blockade, tightly restricting movement out of the territory that is home to 2 million Palestinians. Egypt also maintains restrictions on the enclave. Both sides threats from Hamas for the restrictions. The world's largest free trade agreement, signed by 15 countries in the Asia-Pacific region, entered into force on January 1, 2022. After more than a decade of negotiations, the China-led mega-treaty, known as the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, entered into force. The treaty is effective this Saturday in Australia, Brunei, Cambodia, China, Japan, Laos, New Zealand, Thailand, Singapore, and Vietnam. On February 1st, South Korea will join, and it's still to be ratified in Myanmar, the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia. The RCEP addresses trade in goods and services, the digital economy, intellectual property, and trade disputes, among other issues. The Ministry of Commerce of China welcomed the entry into force of the treaty and stated that it will help boost trade between China and other member countries of the initiative.
The RCEP will also boost investment, growth for regional trade, optimize regional division of labor and cooperation, and strengthen regional industrial chains and supply chains. It will play a significant role in stabilizing foreign trade and investment in China.
A large fire has severely damaged the Houses of Parliament in the South African city of Cape Town. Officials said the fire started on the third-floor offices and quickly spread to the Parliament's lower house chamber. A team of 30 firefighters who first arrived at the scene battled the flames for several hours before being forced to retreat and called for reinforcements. Some 80 firefighters were later deployed, some using a crane to spray water on the blaze. The blaze came hours after Archbishop Desmond Tutu's state funeral at St. George's Cathedral near Parliament. No casualties had been reported and the cause of the blaze was not yet known.
Of course, we are still going to go into what caused the fire, and the fire having started in the old assembly, how it then moved to the National Assembly, is something that will still be investigated. I believe somebody is being held right now and they are being questioned, but we need to go a lot deeper into how this type of event can take place and what measures we will need to take going forward.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at tellusenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For Telesur English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.